Hi everyone! I thought it might be helpful if I walked you through a sample student written conclusion so you could see how some students have applied some of the move beyond strategies to their own concluding paragraphs. And so if you remember last week, we talked about that one introduction paragraph that was written by a student. The title was called Addicted to Facebook. Do we like in order to be liked? Well, what I'd like to do is read through that introduction with you again, and then I'd like to show you the conclusion that went to that paper so you can see how she made some connections between her intro and conclusion. And please do forgive the kitty. She's very excited to be in college today. And so I'm going to go ahead and read the title and the introduction, and you can follow along on Canvas as well. So, addicted to Facebook, do we like in order to be liked? And this student began with an epigraph, which is a quote. We are a generation of idiots, smartphones, and dumb people. Gary Turk. In his short spoken word film, Look Up, writer and director Gary Turk urges us not to let technology and social media control our lives. It is sad and funny how Turk's one simple sentence sums up the reality of my generation. As we grow more and more accustomed to technology, our ability to critically think as individuals seems to weaken and become dumb. Outside technology, especially in the form of computers and smartphones, ends up shaping our identities without us even realizing it. Facebook, a social media site available on our computers and smartphones, is one such outside source that impacts people's identity. Specifically, Facebook's like option has become a powerful drug, and each day we witness more and more people becoming addicted to it. Through the common practice of liking other people's posts and hoping for likes in return, Facebook has helped create a vain generation of people with a childlike need for constant feedback on their lives, which ultimately stems from their feelings of inadequacy. So we talked about that introduction. We talked about how the student used an epigraph hook, which is a quote placed in a special position on the page. And we talked about how she discusses that quote and how it's an excerpt from a spoken word film. We talked about how my student introduced her topic, which is Facebook. She analyzes Facebook. And then we also talked about how she concludes her introduction with that thesis statement. Now, let's go ahead and delete the body of her paper and look just at her conclusion so we see how she wraps up her paper. Even the simplest, most common behavior in the early part of the 21st century, liking other people's posts on Facebook, reveals how badly some people want to fit in with the crowd and how important social acceptance is for us today. However, instead of losing a sense of who we really are in order to be socially desirable and accepted, we should inform ourselves about the forces around us that compel us to think and act in certain ways. We have a choice to say no to all the things that are making us feel less valuable as individuals, and we should not change our beliefs and opinions and who we are just because society says we are not acceptable or desirable. We have the power and an opportunity to prove that we are not a generation of idiots, smartphones, and dumb people. Rather, we are a generation of individuals, confident and caring people who give each other our love, not our likes. So, if we think about that conclusion paragraph through the lens of the strategies that I talked about in the last video about moving beyond your thesis in the conclusion, we can have a lot to say about this concluding paragraph. First, she does begin by briefly restating her main idea, her thesis statement. She says even the simplest, most common behavior, liking each other's posts on Facebook, reveals how people want to fit in, right? That's just a reminder of what she's already talked about. But then she has to move beyond that idea. And she begins by challenging us, right? Challenging her readers to take action in some way. She says, what does she say? We have a choice to say no to the things that make us feel less desirable. We should inform ourselves about the forces around us that are making us act and think in a certain way. She says we should not change our beliefs and opinions just because society says that we should think and act in a certain way. So here, she's using that strategy to challenge the reader, right? And she does it without using the word you. But she also does something else. At the end, she says we have the power and opportunity to prove that we are not a generation of idiots, smartphones, and dumb people. And that is in quotation marks, which means she actually does include a quotation in her conclusion paragraph. My cell phone cut out in the last video that I recorded about conclusions, but the other strategy that you can use when you are developing your conclusion is to include a quotation in your conclusion. So she does this, she includes a quotation, but it is a familiar quotation because if you remember, that is the opening quotation that she began her introduction with. That was that epigraph that was placed right below her title. So in this sense, she includes a quotation, yes, but that quotation echoes her introduction. It repeats something from the introduction. So far, she has chosen to use 3 strategies to develop her conclusion. She has challenged the reader, she's included a quotation, and she's echoed the introduction. All of that work to help her move beyond her thesis. Then, in her final sentence, she tries her best to develop a thoughtful, meaningful final sentence, where she kind of plays with the words of the Facebook like option. She says, we are a generation of individuals, confident and caring people who give each other our love, not our likes. And so when she does that, she actually rewrites the quote, right? So she says, we're not idiots, smartphones, and dumb people. No, she says, we are individuals, confident and caring people. And then that lovely sentiment, we give each other our love, not our likes. So again, there she is trying to end with a meaningful thought. It is a surprising combination of language. She's not being cliched. She's not sort of using overused expressions or anything. But she has followed all of the steps in that conclusion, reminded us of her thesis, moved beyond the thesis in several interesting ways, and ended with a final, poignant, thoughtful final sentence. I hope this helps clarify some of the strategies for how you could also move beyond your thesis in your conclusion paragraph. Thank you.